Poddin My Noggin, hosted by CK Sims, creating a platform to elevate, educate, and heal by creating a space where people can share their stories of struggle, triumph, and redemption. CKS Media.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Poddin My Noggin. I'm your host, CK Sims, and today we have Dr. Corinne Ahmed, a gerontologist, author, and an advocate for aging adults, who has an important note on the aging process overall, I would say.
I think so.
I think so too. So there's something I want to bring up, though, because we're going to get into all of this. But so as I'm going down the almond rabbit hole, right? And learning all about you. Something speaks to me so loudly. So the cover of your book has something on it.
Which you have in the background on your shelf.
All over my house. I am obsessed with owls. And so yeah, I was just like, and it's a cute owl with like a little, I just love it. So the book is called Teenagers, telling a new story about aging. Dr. Ahmed, take us back. What was the interest in kicking off this? What brought you into this line of work?
Oh, well, now that's a long story. I run a business where I am a care manager. So care management typically is working with families who are trying to navigate caring for an aging loved one. So I get a lot of people typically in a crisis, everything was fine until, and you kind of fill in the blank of something has happened. There's been a fall, there's been a health event. And now everybody's kind of in a panic and they're trying to figure everything out because they haven't talked to their loved ones. They haven't planned. They haven't done all the things that they need to do in order for this crisis to go well. And so I get the phone call where they're all panicked and stressed out. And that seems a little incongruous because now I've written this book about telling a positive story about aging, right? And yet I'm working with stressed out people who are going through kind of traumatic age-related events. But the thing that work has really taught me over the last 12 years is that how we look at our own aging really impacts how well we're actually going to age. So when I get people who come into my office early, not in a crisis, who are looking to plan, what are my options going to be for where I'm going to live? Do I have all my paperwork done? Do I have the money I'm going to need? What are the things that I need to be thinking about, right? Those people have a positive outlook on aging. They are looking forward to growing older. And so they are doing all the things they need to do to make sure that it's going to be good for them and that it's going to be good for all their loved ones who are going to be going down this road with them. It's our fear of aging. It's our negative aging culture around us that makes us fear growing older, that then makes us not want to do all the paperwork, not do our wills, not talk about it with our loved ones, which then leads to people calling me in a panic when things do happen. So
they always will.
Something is going to happen, right? Right. And so we can either prepare for it or not. And I don't think a fear tactic gets people to prepare for it, right? Like if I tell you, you need to do your power of attorney documents and all these things because tragedy is inevitable and, all these kind of fear-mongering things about growing older, that just makes people want to bury their head in the sand. I really want us to think about what do we have to look forward to and how can we optimize the situation so that we get the best experience and our loved ones get the best experience, because there really is a lot to look forward to. Growing older today is not like growing older was 20, 30, 40 years ago. There is so much to look forward to but our conceptual ideas around older adulthood really have not changed, even though older adulthood itself has changed quite a bit.
Would you say that, like, I would imagine, because I am a 43-year-old and I am bracing, and there's some grappling with aging here. It's happening, that sort of thing. But would you say the general consensus of people look at this stage of their life as preparing to die?
I think we have two things going on here. We have that kind of perspective where they go, that stage is just about decline and preparing to die, right? Like it's all downhill. And then we also have this view of the stage that it is unlimited leisure, that it's a reward period, that you've worked hard your whole life and these are your golden years and you get to do whatever you want and it's going to be super fun, that sort of thing. So we have two kind of conflicting views that I think a lot of us hold at the same time, right? Like I'm really looking forward to retirement and being able to have freedom and travel and that kind of thing. But then I also am not thinking about, I'm kind of burying my head in the sand about possible other detrimental things at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because for me, you might be getting like a contact form for me after this. I'm like, I need to prepare. So, but, so for me, it's like, I think of it as, I'm not 65. So 65, I live in Canada, it's retirement, that sort of thing. That's what you work towards, I guess. But I think that retirement should be looked at as another life stage, not the end, or not a free sort of willy-nilly type whatever, but just a life stage. Mm-hmm. We still have responsibilities when we retire. We're still going to have to pay the bills and make ends meet and things like that. So, but it's a life stage. So, when you're graduating high school, you're prepping for your workforce. What do you want to do? Usually around 35, 40, you change careers. What do you want to do? Another life stage. 65, this is a life stage. Death may not come to you until like you're 90. So that's like what? We're looking at 25 years there. Mm-hmm. Do the math right? Yes, 25 years. So that's a whole like generation that you could be doing something that fills your cup.
Right. I love the way you put that. I always talk about, purpose and meaning, but I love that phrase, what's going to fill your cup. That's a great way to put it. But so when we talk about how older adulthood has changed, in the United States, when Social Security, which is our money we get from the government in retirement, when that was first implemented, the retirement age was 65. But the average lifespan for an American male was 67. So we were really only planning on you being retired for about two couple of years, right? Not very long. Now the average lifespan is like 77. And that's the average. We actually have more centenarians, people living to 100, and super centenarians, people living to like 110 than we've ever had before in, as long as we've had recorded history. So you are really looking at many more years in this life stage than we've ever had before. You're looking at more healthy years, right? Because it's not just that you've gotten more years of being an old person. I'm putting that in quotes. You've really gotten a bunch more years of being pretty healthy where you can do things that fill your cup, as you said. Again, our conceptual ideas about it haven't changed though, because when you turn 65, we're going to call you an older adult. And when you're 105, we're going to call you an older adult. Tell me another time period in life where we would group people that far apart in age and we would just say, oh, you're in the same age group. You're 40 years apart, but you are both older adults. We don't have new words. This is where my title for my book, Keenagers with a K, I'm kind of arguing that I want to call I'll say young, older adult teenagers, because I need some way to talk about them and distinguish them. I need to be able to distinguish a 65-year-old from a 95-year-old. They are not the same people. And yet we just call them all older adults, right? They're just all the same.
Interesting, because I had not actually thought of that before. So like my father, for instance, is 65. He'll be turning 66. So he is now lumped in, same with my mother, lumped in with someone who's 105 years old.
Mm-hmm.
In the same age bracket. And they're not the same. Right? So my father is 65, he'll be 66 this year. My grandmother is 87. There is a very significant difference between those two individuals. Mm-hmm. Now, mind you, my grandmother's very spry and quick-witted and wants to hear no talk of living in a home or assisted living, because she's like, I don't want to lose my autonomy or my card nights or my gym with my girlfriends. Like, so she's very active and social. So, but so teenagers. Why teenagers? Is that a play on words?
So the way it actually came about, it is a play on words, right? Because keen, that word, Keen, it means, witty, sharp, keen to do things, right? Interested in the world. And, but the way I came up with it, I can take absolutely no credit, because I was trying to come up with a way to talk about this. And a friend of mine asked her mother, what do you guys like to call yourselves? And she said, oh, we call ourselves teenagers. And it was actually what their church group uses as the word for the senior group at church. And she loved it. She's like, I think it's perfect. It's all these things. And I thought, I love that too. That's a great word, because it's this kind of play on teenager, but it also, I think, reflects kind of what you're trying to capture, what I was trying to capture, about that we have this whole generation of younger, older adults who are pretty healthy and are keen to do things, to participate, to continue to contribute. They're not looking to just retire and sit on their front porch and do nothing. And even if they want to travel and they want to, do things with their free time, in between that, they're looking for things that fill their cup, that give them purpose. Maybe it's volunteering, maybe it's going back to work, maybe it's, who knows, whatever it is to them. But it's not the idea of older adulthood that we traditionally have, or what our grandparents or our great grandparents had as their version of older adulthood.
So what bracket would that be then?
I hesitate to put brackets around it, because I think I say younger, older adults, and I think that could be people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever that, because we have a lot of people that retire and they're in their 50s. But I also think that, like, your grandma who's 87 and is still spry and doing a lot of things, we could probably put her in that category too. So, we all know that as we get older, we're going to have more health problems. Things are going to occur. So I think as we get older, we move more into kind of our traditional understanding of older adulthood. But that has shifted now to our 80s and 90s rather than our 50s, 60s, 70s, the way it used to be so consistently.
Well, it's interesting too, because I think, not that long ago, I used to think that was considerably old, right? You know what I mean? Right? For me personally, when I was approaching 41 or 40, sorry, and when I turned 40, I was like, okay, I'm 39 and almost 40. I have, forgive my language, but pissed away my 20s and 30s. And I've treated my body like a garbage dump. So I'm okay with aging, kind of. But one thing I need to do is maybe start aiding myself in mobility, because I know that that's going to become an issue sooner than later. So for me, I started to exercise and work out. to try and become more limber and that sort of thing. And I phase in and phase out like most people do, but like I'm pretty consistent, I think, most of the year until winter hits, and then I just kind of hibernate like a real bear. But yeah, so like the aging topic for me is an interesting one because I've gone through so many phases of it, right? In my 20s, thinking that 40 was the end of everything. And then, now at 43, thinking, well, how many years do I have left to enjoy this life I've been given? Like, will I be here till 70, 80, 90? And like, what will that look like? Right? And I have some ideas. So in the beginning, I asked how you got here. I'm very curious. And now that's an off topic. It's a safe space. But what brought you to this work?
So again, I think I realized that my conceptions about older adulthood or growing older were incorrect. Again, with my care management business, when I first started that, I thought I was going to be working with 40-year-olds who were caring for 70-year-old parents. And what I do is I work with 70-year-olds who are caring for 90-something-year-old parents. And that in and of itself was a surprise. And I have a degree in gerontology, right? Like I study older people. So if I'm that incorrect about it, then a lot of the rest of us have it wrong too, right? But I'm with you. I mean, there is some point where we all look in the mirror or notice something about ourselves and we go, oh crap, this aging thing is happening to me. And, we all kind of have that moment, that struggle, because it is a really interesting, everybody's aging, right? Babies are aging, teenagers are aging, but we don't call it aging then. We call it growing up, right? But we treat aging like it's just something old people do. And of course, you and I will be older at the end of this podcast than we were when it started. I mean, that is just the nature of aging. And so I think I'm with you. I've had that moment of, wait a minute, this is going to happen to me too. And you said your 87-year-old grandma doesn't want to go live in a home, doesn't want to go. I have had people in their 90s say to me, I don't want to go live with those old people. Because and it's not because they don't know how old they are. It's because other older people, we treat them like they're different than us, when really what they are is our future selves. But we treat it like it's not happening or it's never going to be us. And so as I have struggled with it myself, have had those moments of, oh man, this is happening. And as I have seen how people's outlook about their aging shapes the decisions they make, shapes how they plan, shapes the outcome of their own aging, I feel really passionately now that if we want our older adulthood to be better, right? If we want how we are going to be treated when we get there to be better, then all of us have to start caring about how we perceive aging, how we talk about aging, how we are treating people as they grow older, because that is us in the future. I mean, it's either that or death. And so, do you want it to be better? Do you want to look forward to it? Then we've all got to start talking about how to change those perceptions right now, because it's happening to everybody.
Why do you think we other aging? Because that was a really interesting thought process when we're children, teenagers. Even in our 20s, we have still some of that growing up phase. Mm-hmm. And then there seems to be a pause, right? There seems to be a pause in your 20s to about your 40s, when your 40s roll around, where you're, I guess, stagnant, or you're just nothing's happening to you. You're just there. You're just existing. And then after 40, it's like this, all of a sudden this, the other comes into the picture and we're like pushing this away, or we're do you think it's fear?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean,
What are we
because,
afraid of?
well, I think we are afraid of our own aging in part because this is the culture we are growing up in. I mean, the anti-aging industry is a multi-trillion-dollar industry, right? So people are making a lot of money off of your fear of growing older, right? So they can sell you creams and they can sell you medicines and they can sell you exercise equipment and they can sell you all the things to try to prevent aging, right? Or make it so that you don't look like you're aging in some way. So you are being sold this all the time. So that fear from that kind of perspective, we are also like, from the time we are small children, shown that aging is bad because, so I'm going to give you a brief story. When my daughter was 12, we took her to a Bruce Springsteen concert. So this is a couple of years ago now. And she, Bruce is great. Bruce is in his 70s and he's up there and he's playing his guitar. And towards the end of the show, he like rips open his shirt and he's in really good shape. He's got like 6-pack abs, in his 70s. And we're driving home after the show and talking about the concert. And my daughter says, he really shouldn't have pulled open his shirt like that. And I was like, well, why not? And she goes, well, he's a dirty old man. And yeah. And I was flabbergasted. And it's like, why do you think that? And because I am who I am, I really said to her, I'm like, why would you say that? And she goes, well, he just is. And so by the age of 12, society, the culture has taught her that old men are dirty old men. And it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what the context is. He was a dirty old man, even though he was a rock star up on a stage in a concert, not particularly close to her or anything. He was a dirty old man. So that's not something I've taught her. That's not something her father has taught her. The culture has taught her that about old men growing older from the very beginning. Go look at kids' storybook. In kids' storybooks, the older people are witches, old hags, scary old men. I mean, you sometimes get like the grandmotherly, like the fairy godmother kind of thing, but most of the time, they're not portrayed in a particularly positive light. So we are indoctrinating people into this kind of negativity really from birth, from childhood, to this idea that older people are bad, that they're ugly, they're all these things that, why wouldn't you be afraid of it if that's the picture you're being shown all the time?
My wheels of you might see smoke eventually. Because you're hitting so many things that I had never crossed my mind. And I'm thinking through children's books. I keep seeing, old people portrayed as scary or daunting, and even in mainstream movies and cartoons, they're always old people. They're very rarely like young and whatever, And I had never thought about that messaging. I had never thought about what, sort of neurons are firing off in children when they're seeing this repeatedly throughout life. The dirty old man comment, there's a part of me that almost wants to say, like, I kind of see why she might have said that. And then there's the other part of me that's like, do I? Like, there's a battle going on at this moment. Because I think there's this stereotype, not just with old men, but men in particular, that's being extra perpetuated right now in social media and all of that stuff. So, but it's interesting how she went from, especially at a concert, a rock star, that sort of thing, on stage, ripping his shirt off. Hey, if you're 70 years old and you still got abs, even if you don't, like, you do you. Like, live your life, be happy. But it's interesting how she went from there and internalized it and then waited till the car ride home to speak it in a safe space,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which she knew she was in a safe space, and that it got translated to dirty old man. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would have thought maybe in my brain, maybe the thought could have been like, well, because he's old, what, from the mouth of a 12-year-old, right? Like, he's old.
Yeah.
Dirty old man. I apologize to all older men out there that I laughed so hard at that. But
Oh, I do too. I mean, I given who I am, I'm like, honey, no, like we can't go around saying stuff like that. But and it was just her natural conclusion. I mean, to her, it seemed perfectly logical to say that, because that's what she believed.
Well, I love honesty.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Life in Stitches by CK Sims. Available for purchase in paperback and ebook on all major platforms. Partner today with CK Sims and Poddin My Noggin to get in front of an audience that cares. You will be supporting mental health stories, tales of resilience, and uplifting content, aligning your brand with bringing goodness, authenticity, and kindness front and center. This spot could be yours. Do you have a story of struggle and resilience? One that you want to share with others and possibly help someone through their own struggles? Find the link in the show description and fill out the guest form today.
Welcome back, everybody. We're sitting and talking with Dr. Corinne Ahmed. Prior to the break, we were discussing stereotypes of older people. Surprisingly, the messaging we're delivering since childhood that bleeds into that stereotype for old people, and just the aging process in general. I wrote something down, which I think I saw you do a couple times as well. If you've had a thought, do you do that?
I do, but I think I've covered most of the things that I had jotted down. But yeah, I had taken some notes as you were saying things at different points.
I have to do it because, just for anybody listening, this is a part of my aging process. So my mind is not as sharp as it used to be. So I have to, if I get a thought, I have to write it down. Otherwise, it's gone.
I'm going to challenge you there. Did you not have to take notes in your 20s? You just remembered everything's in your 20s?
In my 20s and early 30s, I'd say until about like 35, 36, my memory was so good.
Okay.
Like, so good.
Okay.
And I had very sharp recall. Now, I will think of something and it'll be something I really want to talk about, something I'm very passionate about as well. But I know that if I don't write it down, we're going to talk about something. My brain's going to go off in this direction, and I'm going to, like, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to wake up and be like, oh, shit, I meant to bring that up. So one thing I want to talk about, since we're on this topic of aging, and we just sort of spent a little bit of time talking about dirty old men,
mm-hmm.
right? In your experience, we have a lot of, like, messaging for aging in particular. There's a lot of negative sort of sentiments for aging men as well. We know this. How about aging women?
The question is, are there negative sentiments around aging women?
Oh, I know there are. But I know there are.
Did you hear the sarcasm in my voice?
Yeah. So I want to talk about that because it is literally something that drives me bonkers. That, well, first of all, just period in life alone, the scale versus male versus women is completely askewed. We see a little bit coming closer. It's taking too long. But for aging women, I feel like there's like a whole other world that we don't think about that women go through that men are not affected by.
Sure. I mean, ageism, which is the bias against older people, discrimination against older people, is worse for women. I mean, because it is, it's this idea that as men get older, they become more distinguished, right? More respected. As women get older, they are no longer valued because they're not youthful, right? We're only as good as we are youthful. That this idea that um, women, we have to dye our hair, we can't have wrinkles, we have to wear makeup, we have to do all the creams, like all the things, and it's so I want to be very clear that I think men and women should do whatever they want to do to feel good about themselves, right? I'm certainly not on a crusade to tell people you should never buy anti-aging creams or something like that if that makes you feel better, because we are living in an ageist world. There is age bias out there. If a woman lets her hair go completely gray, it's scandalous a lot of times. It shouldn't be. But if a man lets his hair go gray, nobody cares, right? So you're operating in an ageist society, and women feel an enormous amount of pressure to continue to look youthful in order to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
It's like if you don't continue to do that, if you let yourself age, you start to feel like you become invisible to the people around you. You're not taken seriously. And this is not me speaking personally. This is just what women have said. Like if you look at women who've been interviewed and talked about this, that they feel this pressure. And I mean, I do too. There's no doubt about that, because you want to continue to be taken seriously. And in our society that, you have to, well, I don't know if you have to, but you feel like you have to look a certain way, maintain a certain image in order to have that happen. And men just don't have that experience. Men are allowed to age and women are not.
And I think, yeah, it points back to a lot of the just sort of double standards, right? Because men can look any way that they want and still be taken seriously, whereas women have to fit a specific mold. Mm-hmm. And then the aging process on top of that, for any value they've been able to fight for in their life, to claim and say, listen, I am an expert, I am this, I am that, and take up that space. With aging, that space starts to shrink again if you don't, like you said, if you don't perceivably take on the added duties of appearing youthful, keeping your hair colored, staying on top of your appearance, dressing appropriate. The list is
endless.
Endless, yes. So for women who are aging, and which, just so anybody's out there listening as well, like getting older sucks, and you should, well, no, it doesn't suck, but okay.
I was like, well, there's a very ageist statement right there.
Yes, it is. Okay, it doesn't suck. But I realize now that I do still have bias in me for.
And we all do. We all do. Yeah. So don't feel bad about it. The first step is becoming aware of your body.
So getting older can be challenging as it is. But one thing I always want people to recognize when it comes to women getting older is that they go through an entirely different process than a man. Mm-hmm. Right? And what I'm speaking about, I'm sure everybody knows what I'm talking about. I hope they do, is menopause. Mm-hmm. But first perimenopause, and then menopause, and then they're actually impacted in memory, cognitive function. There's so many things that really impact a woman in menopause. So on top of aging, which is already challenging, they have to go through this life physical change.
Yeah, and it changes like every system in your body.
And it's completely unfair. I'm not a woman, but I have lots of women in my life, and it's just completely unfair. For men, you're aging, so maybe things don't, stand as tall as they once did, or you've lost some hair. There's medication for this, so you can go to the doctor and get a script and you're good to go. For a woman, however, there is no stopping menopause.
There is not, no. And I am no menopause expert. In terms of like the medical piece of it, I could tell you personal stories, but The thing that's really interesting to me as I have reached this age is the lack of medical knowledge around menopause, the lack of study of menopause. The there is more and more awareness of it than there has been, but at the same time, I feel like there's still a lot of the medical establishment that just kind of looks at it and goes, "Well, it's just a natural process. We shouldn't be doing anything about it, right? Like you should just let the natural process occur." And I'm like, "Well, when men can't get things to stand up, that's also a natural process, and we shouldn't be doing anything about that either, right?"
Well, and that's what I was going to say, because that translates to me is that a man doesn't have to go through menopause, so therefore there's not nearly as much money, research, and doctors thrown at it,
I
right?
do think I do think that is changing more and more. There are some really good doctors that are like influencers on TikTok and who have written books and are really trying to bring the discussion to the forefront for women for that purpose. And so I feel like there's this kind of wave of change in that area, but it's been a long time coming. I mean, the fact that we are this far down the road and we still don't know any more than we do, and we don't have standard treatment protocols to help women not only deal with the symptoms but also just feel their best, live their best life during this time period, not just survive it. I feel like all we've done up until now is just say, well, we're going to help you survive it. And instead we ought to be saying, okay, how can we help you survive it and also thrive during this time period?
Well, and I think just general practitioners in general should know that, at a specific age, say probably 35, if a woman's coming in and they're complaining about some weird variations that haven't happened before and you can't figure out what it is, don't slough it off. Maybe think, could this be the beginning of perimenopause? Could this
Yeah.
be a symptom that you're experiencing? Let's do some labs. Let's figure this out. Let's whatever. So for me, social media is one of those things that drives me nuts because it
It's a
is
necessary evil at this
it
point.
is there you go. That's
Yeah.
perfect to say it's a necessary evil because for as much crap that comes out of social media, we do get to see a lot of women talk about their stories
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people consume that information. And so conversations happen, more information gets out there, sometimes not correct information, but the conversations are happening.
Yeah.
So to me, that's we are stepping in the right direction, but like I feel like in 2024, like menopause should be a fully treatable, like getting ready at, once you turn 30, okay, we need to start, menopause planning. Like,
Right.
how are we going to move into, that menopausal phase of your life that's avoidable, but also make things more comfortable for you and ensure that you can just thrive, like you said.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we do all the things for young women to try to prepare them for all the changes that are going to happen when they go through puberty and to, how to prepare. And, we do all this discussion around it at the doctor. I remember when my daughters were getting to that stage, the doctor was talking to them about, when they first got their cycle, we need to have a celebration and we need to do this and like, but all of this talking to prepare them and get ready and tell them what's happening and that sort of stuff. And we don't do any of that. Like, I feel like no people that we don't even hardly know what's going on in menopause. Like we're really just starting to fully understand all the changes and how it impacts all these different body systems, and nobody prepares you, right? Like just no, there's no like class you have that says, hey, here's what's going to happen and here's how you prepare and here's what the treatment options are and that sort of thing. And there really should be, because it's kind of a big deal.
and any man out there, or husband who has daughters or whatever, should have to take 30 days at some point in their life of a high dose of estrogen. Just for 30 days. And when you get through those 30 days without having a mental breakdown or crying or getting overly emotional or agitated or having a hot flash or something like that, and on the other end you come out and you didn't have it, then you can say what you want about menopause. But until you've experienced hormone imbalances, and so um, I think, yeah, so for me, I think aging for women is something I'm definitely passionate about. Aging for myself and men, of course, I'm passionate about. I am a feminist. I don't hate men. I'm not that type of feminist. I'm just a feminist who believes that women should become on equal par in every aspect of life and should receive the same sort of support. So you wrote this book. You have a mental health. Nope, taking that back. You have a care management business. How did that start?
So the care management business came from when I was growing up. We lived right next door to my grandparents. My grandfather passed away pretty quickly. Like, we knew it was coming, but it wasn't long between when we knew it was coming and when it happened. And when he passed away, my mom and her sister realized really quickly that their mom had dementia, and it was much worse than they thought it was, because he had been doing such a good job of protecting her and taking care of her, that they did not know how bad it was. And they were thrown in to being caregivers basically overnight, right? So they went from, we have two parents and they have issues, but they're mostly okay, to losing a parent and then finding out that the other parent was really not okay very quickly. And my grandmother really could not be left alone. So they had to hire home care agencies. She was spending the night at our house, overnight, spending the night at my aunt's house on the weekends. And that journey with my grandmother and her dementia lasted from the time I was in 8th grade until she passed away when I was a junior in college. So it was a long journey. And I watched my mom and her sister struggle with the decisions they had to make some mistakes along the way in terms of facilities and things like that. And I just remember thinking, this is really stupid. Why isn't there somebody who helps you figure this out, right? Helps you do this stuff. And I think a lot of people think that, like, if your loved one's in the hospital, the discharge planner at the hospital is going to really help you make decisions and figure things out. And this is no disrespect to hospital discharge planners, because their job is to get you out of the hospital. That's their job. It is not their job to make sure that it is the very best possible placement, or that it is going to fit your financial issues, like once health insurance isn't paying, that kind of stuff. So families end up in a crisis, and they need somebody who knows all the different communities, knows the different home cares, knows what the resources are in the community to help them figure out how to best care for that loved one. And generally, again, families have not talked about this. They haven't, something has happened to their loved one. They don't know where the bank accounts are. They don't know how to manage the household. They don't know what their loved one wants, right? Like, what did that loved one want to have happen in a crisis? Are they okay going to a facility? Do they want to go home? Do they, um, what's quality of life to them, right? Like, how do we make medical decisions? All of these things come up really suddenly, and you're upset and you're emotional, and now you need to know about a million things all at one time, and you don't know any of it. So that's the phone call we get, and we help people figure it out. So we know all the resources. I have a team. It's myself. We have a social worker. We have a nurse, and we just try to wrap around people to offer them every possible solution based on their needs, their budget, and to educate them about what these possibilities are, and walk them through it, right? Like, walk them through the whole process until they get their loved one settled until the crisis passes. And then we continue to work with a lot of families after that crisis as well. But that's how it got started, and then that's what we do.
And you've been doing that for how long?
12 years.
12 years. That's amazing. Yep. Are you nationwide or statewide?
Yeah, we're in North Carolina, and we're in the Piedmont Triad area, so kind of in the middle of the state, and we're local. There are people like me all over the country, so you can find people like me, but no, we're local to our area.
So it's interesting because it's just not something you really think that you would need, right? And I'm actually
curious. You need it until you do.
Yeah, and then now I'm curious: do we have something similar in Canada that helps you make these decisions and points you in the right place? You got to do a Google search to figure that out. And
so in the U.S.,
Navigators, right?
Choice Care Navigators, yeah. In the U.S., the professional organization is called Aging Life Care, and you can do a search on that website for somebody in your area. They may have people in Canada on that website. I honestly don't know.
I'm going to have to check now for sure. And then, so you're a nationally certified guardian. What does that mean?
So one of the pieces of my care management practice is that we can be appointed guardian for people who have been declared incompetent. And typically for us, we specialize in older adults. So typically in that case, it's someone who has dementia and needs someone to be, they did not do their healthcare power of attorney documents. They did not get anyone in that position. And so their dementia has gotten to a point that somebody has to be appointed to manage their life, right? To figure out when they need to go to the doctor, get their prescriptions filled, where are they going to live, all those kinds of things. And so we can be appointed guardian of individuals in that case.
That sounds intense.
It can be. It usually is very intense in the beginning because usually there's, some sort of crisis that's happened that's made people realize this person needs a guardian. And so we have to put the fires out, and then it tends to settle down and be kind of a regular ongoing thing. But it's usually pretty intense in the beginning.
Wow. Certified Senior Advisor and Advanced Professional Aging Life Association, which is where you just said people can go look to find people just like you all over the country. And right. I have to Google for Canada because I'm very curious now. And you study developmental psychology with a specialty in adulthood and aging.
Yeah. So when I was going through graduate school, there weren't a lot of gerontology programs. And so my undergraduate degree was in psychology. So I went on in psychology, developmental. And when you do developmental psychology, you have to kind of pick what age group you're going to specialize in. You can do babies, you can do kids, you can do adolescents, or you can do adults, right? Again, adults kind of all get grouped together. And so my specialty area was adulthood and aging.
So 12 years, you've got this book, Teenager, telling the story of aging. It's not right in front of me. I think I got that right.
Telling a new story about aging.
Telling a new story. There we go. Telling a new story about aging. So you can get this on Amazon. The paperback is on sale right now for $18.62, and you can get the Kindle version for $9.99 if you want to save some trees. And you can also head over to CorinneAumann.com. I'm going to link it in the description with the correct spelling. You can follow on Instagram. I'll give all of that as well. Corinne, for people who are out there right now really struggling to grasp the aging process, to accept or admit that they are getting older and this is going to happen, what would you want them to know? I
think I said it earlier, but that there's a lot to look forward to, and that the way to have the very best experience is to prepare for it. Denying your aging, denying that it's going to happen, only leads to poor outcomes.
Yeah, I think that's important to really consider the whole, that it's going to happen, prepare, what is life going to look like.
A positive outlook on aging. There's research on this. A positive outlook on aging will be the difference in 7.5 years of your life. People who have a positive outlook live 7.5 years longer than people who have a negative outlook.
And for anyone that's in my age bracket and worried about it, I will tell you this. Getting older has been so far the most fun I have had in my life. And most people walk through life with a giant bag of F's that seems to always replenish itself. Let me tell you how, I don't know how it happens, but as you get older, and maybe it's getting more comfortable in your skin or whatever, but that bag just empties out and it's like...
You don't give any of those F's anymore.
They're just no longer existent. Thank you so much for being here. You're wonderful. If you go over to the website, you can check out the media page. You've appeared on a number of podcasts. Thank you for appearing on my little old podcast. One thing for people listening at home, try and be mindful of your unconscious bias. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It just came up for me in this show.
Check your ageism at the door.
Yeah, well, we all have it, as you said. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting to say, because I think that's just a hardwired part of everybody, to think growing older sucks. But it doesn't. So
it doesn't have to.
Well, it doesn't have to, absolutely. So yeah, I challenge yourself to rethink about the aging process. Go read Teenagers, telling a new story about aging.
That's it.
And get your copy today. Thank you again so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. It was lovely talking to you. I hope your daughter doesn't run into any more dirty old men in her life. But that was a great laugh. I'm not sure if you'll tell her you told some person on the internet about that story, but you can, if you do, you can tell her that gave me a really good giggle. Yeah, I wish you the very best, and I keep an eye out on how things continue to go. Also, if you're in the North Carolina area and you have an aging loved one, reach out, book an appointment, and start crisis planning. Or not crisis planning. You wouldn't call it crisis planning. Would you?
Start planning.
Just start planning. Yeah, yep. Start planning for the inevitable, because it is going to happen one day, and that's not fear-mongering.
Right.
It's just facts. So do that. Thanks again. Take the very best care of yourself. And
thank
to everyone
you.
at home.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it was great. Thanks.
For media and sponsorship inquiries, email info@cksims.com or visit cksims.com and fill out the contact form. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. A new episode airs every Saturday. CKS Media.